guys, welcome to GoJo and Golic. I'm Jessie Cofield, back from the dead, aka maternity leave. And now we're doing this cool little thing. We're doing a little cold open here, like my cold body has become warm again as I'm back from the dead. Anyway, coming up on today's show, we got a little NBA catch-up going on, some major moves from around the league. Going to talk about that Paul George deal. Hey now! Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, WNBA All-Stars. Of course, we've got to talk about that and their enduring rivalry that is not a feud at all. And we are back. GoJo went to Japan. I'm back from the dead for maternity leave. Senior, still 61. All that and more. Let's watch the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., the aforementioned, very much alive, Jessie Cofield, back from maternity leave here. We got a great show coming up for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here for the duration now, live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and all those great places here. And that is going to be for the duration now. We enjoyed our little time off here for me and Dad. It was off all last week. I was on vacation in Japan, which we can certainly get to plenty of here. Dad had to fend for himself at the end of the prior week. He got a little dose of what retirement could have been like if my mom would have actually wanted him to be around the house more often. And Jessie was creating human life. So we all did things of equal importance over the. Jessie, how are you feeling? That was incredible. Yeah. You've got the level of give a bleep that I would expect a mother of two rolling back in here, Frosty, to have.
Yeah, I mean, it feels good to be here. I could start crying at any moment because that's on hormones and pregnancy. So don't be alarmed if that happens. There's something in my left eye. So if there's tears coming out of the left eye, that's just, what's going on. So I'm really happy to be here, happy to be back with you guys. Sad to leave my baby. That's on being a working mom. And I can't wait to talk sports with you guys. It's a beautiful thing to be back sitting at this desk.
I do love your, as Mike said, your level of don't give a bleep, because we've changed the open a little bit to where it's this cold open where you just stand there and when Claudia was filling in, she would do that. And this is the first time you did it. And about 5 minutes before the show, the producer says, "Hey, Jessie, you want to go practice that?" And she practiced the new open. She's like, "No, I'm good."
No.
And it's like, yeah,
no,
when
from the people who brought you Finance Bros traveling
like,
without listening to any music or anything. World. Yeah. The raw dogging has now taken itself to the open of the show here from Jessie.
Yes.
So, Dad, you're not running on any sort of issues with jet lag or the jet lag of creating human life here. So how are you? How was your week off, Dad, most importantly?
My week off was great, hanging out with your mother, with the dogs. We did a lot around the house. We're getting ready for the trip out to Tahoe for the golf event this week, which the whole family will be out there. We're really looking forward to that. So it was a wonderful week. Yes, there was nothing. I had no time constraints, not trying to make plans. I certainly didn't birth a child like Jessie did. So yes, my week was relatively easy compared to Jessie, who was the one I wanted to find out how she is. She gave us a quick update. And Mike, you were in Japan for 10 days. Now, we heard from you. The one good thing I would say about Mike is when he's engaged with something, he does put the phone down a lot and he stays engaged with it. So I give him a lot of credit for that. But we did hear from him throughout the week about the different things you were doing in Japan. And all in all, it sounded like it was a great trip. Jessie, have you ever been to Japan?
No, but my husband has many times. But I do think it's funny the way you're just like, the one good thing about Mike, the one.
Yeah, he's riddled with flaws and insecurities, but man, when he is in the mix somewhere, he stays where 10 toes are firmly planted. But no, it was very interesting as I sit here now looking at 10 different kinds of Kit Kat that I brought back on the ground. Right. You could take the American out of America, but you can't take the fat kid out of Tokyo, apparently, because I got over there and immediately went running to the 7-Elevens, the Lawsons, all the experiences that everyone told me. And that's what I would say first and foremost about that trip is thank you to everyone who offered me some bit of advice on what to go, where to go to, how to do this, how to operate over there. It all was extremely helpful. but no one was more helpful than everyone over in Japan. That is the nicest, most hospitable bunch of people I have come across there. All the reviews that you see out there, and there are plenty of restaurants and places you go over there where people act like the service is foul or anything like that. You got to be a real bleep hole to go over there and get bad service, because everyone could not have been nicer and more helpful to the big, dumb 6'4" tattooed American who knew very little Japanese, Jessie, trying to operate.
I was going to say, actually, were you like a walking clown? Were people like taking photos of you and stuff? Because you were probably two Japanese people stacked on top of each other. Was you walking around Tokyo? So like, were people I was
cartoonishly large.
Right, taking photos of you.
No one took my picture. People told me that the entire time. They're like, you're going to be an oddity over there. People are going to be running up to, not a single one. It started to make me feel insecure by the end. I'm like, am I doing something wrong? Do I not look inviting, Dad?
I'm one, because the two of us have been in Japan. Jessie, your husband has, so the three of us, and you're the one excluded. I was there just for a weekend doing a preseason game, and this was a couple of decades ago, so certainly a little different then. How, Mike, you said everybody was more helpful. Everybody was very nice when I was there, but there was a lot of pointing to pictures. There wasn't a lot of interaction because I didn't speak the language, and they a lot of them didn't either. So it was a lot of pointing to, basically when I say pictures, pointing to the food I wanted to eat. But I did enjoy it. Did you ever think, though, Mike, that they're very friendly to you because you're twice the size and you're tatted, that they're scared to frickin' death of you?
I don't know. It seemed pretty par for the course. Like, my buddy I was over there traveling with isn't some 6'4" gigantic guy like me. So he didn't instill that same fear and still got treated it's just the way of life over there, man. It's a couple of like the big takeaways I had from this trip were just that is, one, we are so lazy and terrible because we would not afford that same level of comfort, and do not, to the people that come over here. Now, land of opportunity, all that stuff, but a lot of Japanese people know a lot of English, and there are not a lot of Americans speaking English who also would know enough Japanese to be able to accommodate over that way. And so between how clean the city of Tokyo is, I could have eaten off the floors of those subways. Those were the cleanest, quietest, most considerate subway cars. As someone who is a stickler for travel over here and wars against the selfishness of the average American traveler and the way that they don't pick up their boxes at TSA and the way that they crowd the moving walkway and go in the wrong boarding zone, you get none of that over there. The line culture is A+. It is ruthlessly efficient. Everyone gets where they're going in a timely factor because they look out for the other people and they realize they're not the only ones traveling. So that part was remarkable, and the ready access to, again, 7-Eleven that's got more treats than any of ours over here. They really cooked in those 7-Elevens, and the soft serve ice cream culture. I never went more than a block without easy access to soft serve ice cream in some way, shape, or form, and it made my whole trip so much better.
What about the wet wipes thing?
Oh, man, let me tell you. So they're not big on like paper towels and like napkins at the table, but before every meal, you get that like wet towel to kind of wipe your hands off on.
Right.
And that's even on the train. Like, they'll give you one in a little plastic container to wipe down with. And you feel so much better going into and out of every eating, especially when you eat like me, usually covered in sauce, chocolate on my fingers, like I'm some fat little kid with wet Snickers at Halloween that melted a little bit in the bag. It really helps a lot. And I wish we could bring that back over here a little bit more. Dad, I thought of you, though, because a lot of people, like, I think have this weird thing that, like, Japan is some technologically far advanced super future. Right. I saw more old school calculators over there at the checkout counters at these places than anywhere I've been in forever, Dad. It would have made your heart sing.
These are my people. Oh, I'd have loved that. That would have been awesome. I saw your note about that, and I was like, wow, yeah, that wouldn't register with me. What was the hardest thing for you to maybe not do that you're used to doing in America that you couldn't do there, or maybe the toughest transitional thing that you had?
Stairs. By far, stairs. They are all so steep and they are so shallow and they are not built for people my size. And Everyone loves beer over there. Beer, sake, all that stuff. So your boy had a few cocktails, and trying to navigate up those tight stairs when you're 2 or 3 Sapporos deep all of a sudden becomes a matter of life or death if you're someone my size. So that was probably the toughest thing to navigate there. That and just like having like ready accessible television, although you see some awesome sports over there. I got there the first day and got to watch live badminton on TV. The coolest part by far, though, and it is the segue for what we're going to talk about today, is the fact that when Woj decided to start breaking news at like 3 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, it was in the middle of the afternoon for your boy. So I'm sitting over here reading about Paul George going to the 76ers. Everybody else is asleep in their beds, and I'm here digesting takes on the timeline in the middle of the afternoon in Tokyo. It was fantastic.
How was that news received over there? What was, I mean, obviously not as much as it is over here, but when that broke over there, was there any kind of, acknowledgement?
Nobody cared there. I will say sports as a tie that binds was never more apparent than being out somewhere international. Because when you meet people, sports can be something that brings us all together. I think it's why we love it so much, especially out there. I got to go to a Japanese baseball game at the Tokyo Dome, one of the coolest venues I have ever been to there. They've got the strongest beer girls known to man who have kegs mounted to their back and just run up and down the aisle refilling you at a moment's notice. They are the most... It is them and then the porters that helped carry our bags up Mount Kilimanjaro when I went and climbed that with Chris Long's charity are the strongest human beings I've ever met, because it's the same girls going up and down the aisle at the Tokyo Dome the entire time with a full pony keg strapped to their back of either beer or highball or whiskey or any number of things that they got going on there. But it was a ton of fun. It's like a college football game. In the Japanese Baseball League at the Tokyo Dome, they got student sections with big crowds and trumpets and drums and orchestrated cheers and songs. It was cool as hell. They love baseball. Everybody was ready to talk about Shohei Ohtani. Not a single person cared that Paul George is now a 76er.
No one, not even a little bit. Nobody even reacted. At least you could announce it to everybody.
I could announce it to everybody that Paul George is now a Philadelphia 76er, and he signed a 4-year, $212 million contract, Jesse.
Which, by the way, as someone who is in the year that I will turn 34, reading all the reports about this, being like, this man's going to get paid through age 38, which makes him extremely ancient for the NBA. Everybody's talking about this deal saying like, geez, it was so risky, and it makes you feel really old, and it makes you feel like your bones might just turn to dust at any moment. But yeah, Eastern Conference signing with Philly. How do we feel about this move, fellas?
This puts them right there. I mean, listen, you're fighting Boston first, right? And then after that, you're probably putting the Knicks there. But this is now a crew that I think could battle with them. Let's see what some of the other pieces, that they build around that. But now you're dealing with a big man, a wingman, and a guard, all on max deals, by the way, as Tyrese Maxey signed that max deal a little bit ago. So they're spending the money, and it's a situation where you have to go for it while Joel Embiid is not as old as Paul George. I think he's like 4 years younger, but his body is probably way older than Paul George's. And you have to worry about duration of a season. So now when he inevitably is going to miss some time, maybe they won't fall as much in the standings, like 3 to 7, like they did last year, and can keep Embiid so he can be healthy for a playoff run. We'll see, but you never know, because it was as inadvertent somebody landing on his knee, which can happen at any time out on the court. Mike, I think this is the best move to me there has been in the offseason of helping the team. I know there was a talk of Jimmy Butler there, but that never really went anywhere. But to grab Paul George and what he's still able to do with Maxey and with Embiid, man, I think this puts them about as close to Boston and certainly to New York as can be.
Them being the second best odds to win the title right now on DraftKings Sportsbook behind Boston, that's a little rich for my taste in front of teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder or the Denver Nuggets, just because I got to see it with the 76ers. and their parts that they've got currently now. And Paul George, who's also been someone who I wish I could remember who tweeted this, but someone said that Paul George is like crab legs at a buffet. It seems like a good idea at the time. It reeks of wealth, but has anyone ever actually been happy getting crab legs at an all-you-can-eat buffet? The answer is more often than not as satisfied as you would expect to be. That being said, Dad, I'm with you on the optimism here because I think this is the 76ers' last best chance with this current core, right? Based on what we've seen with Joel Embiid's body, you've got Tyrese Maxey ascending at the right time. And I think that's the most important factor in this entire acquisition is, does Tyrese Maxey continue to ascend in the way we saw him start to last year that warranted this massive payday here? Because Paul George, plenty of reason to be excited about coming off last year. Played the most games that he played in the Clippers uniform last year at 74. And you look at him, some of the things that'll translate well. He was incredibly efficient last year. He was his field goals, 56.7% of his field goals were assisted on last season, his highest rate in the last 9 seasons, and the first time in the last 6 years that was over 50%. So can operate without the ball in his hands necessarily. He shot a career best 41% from 3-point range, a career best 90.7 from the free throw line, and his 2-point percentage was 52.3. Only Steph Curry and Kyrie Irving were the other players that shot 40% or better on at least 200 3-point attempts and 90% or better on at least 200 free throw attempts. So Paul George had the kind of quality season in the ways basketball-wise that do mesh with this roster, but it's still a roster where, and the selling point with Paul George has always been, well, he doesn't have to be the best guy or even the second best guy. And that's a weird thing to sell for a player of his caliber and at his contract.
It was, but it's about fit now, right? So they always say there's one ball. How many touches can he get? Well, he had the fewest amount of touches in the last 5 years last year. The amount of stats you have breaking this stuff down, 9.8% had his hands on the ball. I mean, it's ridiculous, these stats. But the telling thing for me about that is he doesn't need the ball in his hand, right? And he won't have the ball in his hand a ton. Maxey will, Embiid will, but there will be Paul George on the wing to make those plays either out there or driving. So to me, I'm with you. I think it's a pretty good analogy about the buffet. Because I remember going to a lobster all-you-can-eat buffet, and it definitely, it doesn't really live up. You get all you want, but what are you really getting? So I understand. It's exactly right. But I guess my thought would be Philly had to make a move. Philly is in a couple of years situation now, I think, with Embiid, right? So what was the move? What would there have been a better move out there for Philadelphia? I don't know. No. This had to be one of the best moves. So while I understand all that could be on the negative side, I definitely think this was the move to try and make it happen now.
No, I agree. It was the best move on the table, and especially like you mentioned, for them, what he represents as a wing defender, especially in the Eastern Conference, where Boston is the standard until further notice. You mentioned the 76ers shelling out paydays. Everyone on Boston's making money. I don't know who picks up the tab at dinner at this point on that team.
The new owner.
Drew Holiday and Derek White and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum all got money like it's going out of style with that team. And so they're the standard until further notice, but much like it used to be, hey, you had Al Horford, who was considered the Embiid stopper early in his career. Now you're going to have Paul George, who is tasked with being one of the guys to try and stymie and offset some of what you get from those two stars in Brown and Tatum on the Boston Celtics in some pivotal moments, even at this point in his age and his career. So best move on the table for them. I'm totally with you, Dad. But I think it's also worth looking at a team like the Milwaukee Bucks from last year and saying, hey, we thought it was going to be instant add, instant talent upgrade, and instant results, and it wasn't quite that easy. Now, Milwaukee still finished third in the Eastern Conference last year, but for the 76ers, between the injuries that could potentially befall Joel Embiid that we've seen become a part of the story all too much, and then Paul George just having to get acclimated to a new team, I still do wonder if it's worth having them this far above in the odds on DraftKings Sportsbook, a team like Milwaukee who's going to be going into a much more stable year two with Dame and Giannis at the heart of this team.
Yeah, they were. I kept talking about them if they can get it together by the playoffs with Middleton and his injuries and how that affected him. But if he comes in healthy with Dame and Giannis, I agree. Well, one quick note on the Celtics. How about this though? They sign all these guys to all this money where, of course, ownership is the one writing the checks and signing the checks, and they're selling. I love it. Boston Basketball Partners, LLC, announced they're selling the franchise, citing estate and family planning considerations. You have the best team in basketball. You just signed them for hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're getting out, and you're going to make billions on the deal. That's a weekend winner right there.
Yeah, we could certainly get to the all-weekend team, but selling high seems like it might work out pretty well in the lucrative sports franchise business for those former Boston owners. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We're knocking off the cobwebs after a nice week away, and we hope you guys enjoyed the time over the last week. We had the 4th of July holiday. We'll get to some hot dog fallout coming up in just a little bit. I am fascinated to see what the reception was like back here in the States, because I tried to stay up late in Japan to watch the hot dog eating contest, notably without Joey Chestnut there to defend his usual mustard belt. He was participating in a different contest. I have a lot of questions about that, but I hope everyone got to enjoy a happy, safe, and healthy 4th of July with all of their family and loved ones here. And we wanted to come back and look at a little July 4th and long, get to some topics coming up from the NFL this offseason, since we're right in that lull where, Dad, you know this as well as anybody. Every NFL executive and front office member is just sitting around right now praying they don't get the call.
Yep.
Someone's been arrested, something's happened, and something's gone on right now. Unfortunately, we just had an unbelievable tragedy over the 4th of July with one of the Minnesota Vikings rookie cornerbacks, and Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon, killed tragically, but I believe by a drunk driver. Just awful situation. And so you sit around, and obviously, first and foremost, you know, your thoughts and prayers go out to the family there, his teammates, current and former, for just what has to be an absolutely devastating time.
Horrible. And I think there were there 2 or 3 people that died in that crash, and everybody in the other car was fine. So, or I don't think anything major happened to them. If I'm recalling it right when I read about it, it's just horrifically tragic. So that's in another category by itself. To your point, back to this is, yes, you don't want to hear, the things that can kind of make you cringe a little bit, the arrest or someone saying something maybe really stupid that's going to hang with them, or something that's your team is going to have to talk about when they get back together.
I mean, frankly, though, let's just be honest. In this day of social media, what it really is do you think teams should just hire somebody to just constantly watch everyone's Twitter? And just be like, delete that. You got to delete that now. Because it seems like that's what we really need.
But they're not going to listen.
Teams all have those people. Teams absolutely have those people already.
They
100%.
Do, but players don't listen. The players aren't going to listen.
We need somebody that has everyone's passwords and can just go in and delete tweets. Just go in and delete the tweet. Just go in and edit things a little bit, because the drama right now is all happening in the Twitter streets. Like, front offices are now just having to deal with Twitter beef.
Well, not just Twitter beef here. So we've got a little cowboy on cowboy action that's gone on here. Malik Hooker, longtime now NFL safety and new Dallas Cowboys safety, had this to say, calling out one of the best, brightest young defensive talents in the NFL and his teammate Micah Parsons on some of his defensive effort and priorities from last season. Take a listen to this.
Problem with it, my thing would be, though, for Micah, my advice would be for Micah would be, just make sure we're all right, where and being where your feet are. Because if we're at work and, the run game's terrible, but you're doing a podcast every week and the run game is terrible, then, what are you really caring about? Are you caring about the crowd that, is watching your podcast? Are you caring about the success of our team and the Super Bowl that we're trying to reach? See what I'm saying? So.
Now, that's a wild statement to make publicly, Dad.
I think it's a ridiculous statement to make publicly. I mean, especially for a guy playing. Does Malik Hooker, who has been with the Cowboys for a couple of years, is he 24/7? Is every waking moment something about the Dallas Cowboys? Every waking moment? Is he getting up in the middle of the night and throwing on film? I mean, is everything? I mean, this is one of the things I've heard for a while when people start to do other things is, where's his attention? You know what? There are 24 hours in a day. You put your time in at work. And I know with Micah Parsons, there's other thoughts out there about how teammates perceive him and things like that. But there's no denying his talent on the field. So I always get a little miffed with this. And this is now coming from somebody, on his defense, who that's what gets me. I'm sorry, but Malik Hooker, you're not going 24/7. I don't know you, but I feel pretty confident that you're not going 24/7 and studying all the time.
My thought would be less that it's like that explicit of a criticism and more, Dad, do you read anything that someone in that defensive meeting room with him feels comfortable publicly criticizing Micah Parsons' commitment overall to the team? Maybe not just a referendum on him as the podcast, but maybe this is Malik Hooker saying, no, I see the work habits behind closed doors, and that's not reeking of it. Because that was where my mind went. Generally, when I look at this point, Micah Parsons, his role in the run game, all this, like, no one's looking at the Cowboys' defensive issues and going, 11's the problem in white. Whether it's the run game, the pass game, what he affords you is the tip of the spear on that defense that, yes, needs just flat out more size in the middle. I think his best use is still on the edge as a rusher. I think putting him as an off-ball linebacker tends to be a bit of a waste of his talents.
Yes,
but you can listen, everyone plays a role in it. But, Dad, my thought process is more just, does this say something about what's happening behind closed doors that he feels comfortable criticizing his effort at all publicly, considering the background of all the other things you mentioned that have come up with Micah Parsons?
Well, yeah, I mean, that could be it, because we have heard about talks of him as a teammate. But I guess my thought would be, the production on the field is there. Now, you're right in saying if others on that defense, so we were talking about two different things as far as what you do off the field as opposed to what's going on in the meeting room. And I can't speak to that. I can't speak of what's going on in the meeting room or on the walkthroughs or the weight room or whatever, where you do hear some of these things. But the guy does produce. I mean, but there is a difference of just looking at someone and saying how many sacks or pressures is he getting or how is he playing all around. because you want somebody who, is going to be an all-around defensive player, run, pass. This guy has been a Swiss Army knife, right, too, especially in the beginning, playing on the line, playing at an outside backer, playing at an inside backer, able to do it all. Now they seem to be honing in on more of just the rusher. So I guess maybe let me put it this way as well. Not that you don't want him to be very good against the run, but you do have a lot of edge rushers in this league who you don't worry. Is he an edge rusher now? Is that what Micah Parsons is? Is that what you're doing?
So, yes.
Okay. So with TJ Watt, with Myles Garrett, with Mac, with I don't know if I put Max Crosby in there because the dude plays against the run as well. But a lot of times we talk about our edge rushers that we don't care about tackles on the run. We care about pressuring the quarterback in a passing league, right? So it's not really looked upon as how many tackles are you getting. Now, that doesn't mean on a run play we want you getting blown out and opening up huge holes, but I haven't really seen that a whole lot with Micah Parsons either. So I maybe I'd be a little different on this against the run if he were in fact playing a DN and a linebacker still where he was very involved in that. But edge rushing is a little bit different. About the expectations of what you needed. It's like help on the run, be there on the pass. That's the edge rushers of today. Hold your edge up for sure if it's a run at you. And a lot of times that's what you want to do to edge rushers is run at them, because when you run away from them, they have the ability to chase it down. So I'm with you as far as I'm not in the locker room or in the film room to know where exactly Malik Hooker is going. But I would say Micah Parsons is laying out a pretty good argument on his side that says he's getting the job done on the field.
Listen, we could parse it a million different ways. I want a player that draws the attention of others to make life easier for his teammate. And there is no question that Micah Parsons, just by being on the field, and they move him all over the place for this reason, draws the eyes and attention of the offense on every snap. It's what we look. You mentioned all these other disruption. I want a disruptor, however that looks. And we had these arguments. I remember there was some ESPN stats and analytics folks that brought up Aaron Donald's proficiency as a run defender because it doesn't look the way that you're normally used to seeing run defense maybe played, because the goal is to get upfield and wreak havoc. And Micah Parsons does that. He does it early and he does it often. So it'll be overall the Cowboys' defensive experiment. Again, Malik Hooker's not wrong in identifying the problem. And for Mike Zimmer, who's coming over at the helm of this defense now, that's going to look style-wise drastically different from Dan Quinn and the cover 3 stuff, which we already saw change some. But Mike Zimmer's defensive scheme, very different. Something that Micah Parsons should fit well into because he's great enough to fit well into anything, going to change and going to be a fascinating storyline this season.
Can we all agree, though, this is private family drama that should not be taken out of the group chat?
That's where I was going, Jesse. This is one place I will not change my old school way. And I know we're in a new school now. Keep that stuff in-house. You don't need that stuff broadcasted. Keep that stuff in-house, or yahoos like us are going to be talking about it all day.
Coming up next, we'll give you 2 of the names that yahoos like us are going to spend most of the summer talking about on GoJo and Golic next. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic, and even in the time we've been off here, the WNBA has kept it moving, man. And what's been a banner season, I saw the WNBA All-Star voting, which we'll get to. The polling numbers and the fan vote numbers through the roof, almost 10x it looked like what you had in last season as this league continues its upward ascent. But Dad, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, forever tied at the hip because of their history in college, both continue to perform at an incredibly high level from over the weekend. Angel Reese's double-double streak breaks Candace Parker's record, and Caitlin Clark now becomes the youngest player in WNBA history to record a triple-double, doing it in this rookie season. So how impressed have you been by the fact that they both right now seem to have lived up to the hype thus far?
Yeah, I mean, for really just about 99% of the rookies, you're going to have kind of a tough start. She does still lead the league, does Caitlin Clark in turnovers, but she certainly is showing what an all-around player she is. She almost had the triple-double against the Mercury last week when she played against Diana Taurasi, when everybody was talking about that matchup. She was one rebound short of a triple-double, and she gets it here, though, finally. So those two have been fantastic, which obviously is great for the league. But we're still, Jessie, we haven't had you on in a while now. So kind of I'd like to get your thought overall. Now we're going to get to the All-Star game, where the two of them are in it because it's against the USA women's national team. So you can chat about that. I have a bold statement to make about that one right now or in a second. But Jessie, I'm just wondering where you are on the whole Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, this rookie class, and all the kind of news and talk that's been going around.
I think that it has been absolutely insane to watch the WNBA fumble their cash cow in Caitlin Clark. Like, I'm sorry. I totally agree. There's people who have been here all along, who have been watching women's sports, who have been into WNBA. But what kind of a league is going to say no to more people becoming invested in your sport and watching your games? And I feel like...
I don't think they have, though.
But like,
how have they fumbled it in terms of there's more eyeballs on it? We mentioned the attention heading into the All-Star game. Like, I get it. It's been clunky, and there have certainly been growing pains. But, Dad, does it really feel like the WNBA is not capitalizing on this? I mean, I'm watching SportsCenter almost every day now, seeing them WNBA highlights woven in like we've always wanted. Coverage of this league like every other league that we get in North America that seems to be happening more frequently now.
While you scratch your head at some of the statements that are being made at times, I guess the old adage, any publicity is good publicity, right? When Angel Reese, got the flagrant one for hitting Caitlin in the head when she was swiping to the ball. And I believe she was swiping to the ball, caught her in the head, got a flagrant one. And she said after the game, y'all are going to show this 20 times. And we came on the next day and I said, you're damn right. We're going to show it 20 times. And you know what? The league should be happy we're going to show it 20 times because we're showing a WNBA highlight 20 times. So sometimes even if it's negative, it's a positive for them.
Okay, I would like to amend my statement. I would like to amend my statement. Because you're right. I guess what I want to say is I don't understand why a lot of the other players in the WNBA seem to be so peeved by like this whole Caitlin Clark thing. That's what I'm getting at.
I think it's going to vary for everybody here. Like, I'm not going to do the thing where we paint the broad brush. And I know you're not either of the league as everyone who's jealous there. We know that in sports, there's always going to be competitors there. I do think for a while, to Dad's point, the questions and the coverage all skewed overwhelmingly into everyone just getting asked about Caitlin and all of these things being about stuff that's not basketball happening on the court. And what I guess I'm saying now as we get to this point where we're talking about the All-Star break, we're getting ready to talk about this, it has settled into more just basketball conversation now. Everything hasn't felt like a culture war in the last couple of weeks. It's been talking about, hey, now Caitlin Clark, this person that we talked about as really just a pure scorer in college. I watched these games and the connection between her and Aaliyah Boston, the way that she handles things in the open court, the passing ability as this rounded point guard of a player who also can pull up and get her own shot. You look at Angel Reese, who's come in and just overwhelming physicality, working the offensive glass, especially already one of the best rebounders in the WNBA right now, which, Dad, I know you love as a part of her game. So it does feel like we've kind of settled into, okay, now that we got through that initial wave of nonsense, we can focus on the basketball because, again, these women and the rest of the league, I mean, we can still not spend enough time talking about A'ja Wilson and the way she's playing right now, looking like she's ready to notch another MVP this season, leading the league, I believe, in points, blocks, and second to Angel Reese in rebounds per game. She's been a juggernaut.
Yeah, she's obvious. She's without question the best player in this league right now. But I agree with you. But I'll also say in all sports, if you get a young phenom, and again, Caitlin Clark broke every scoring record there was, you're going to get people at the next level. Now you're a pro to get hammered on. You don't think LeBron got that? You don't think any young star that came, whether it was out of high school or out of college with all this notoriety in hockey, these young kids, 18, 19 years old, you don't think they're trying to get the vets are trying to smoke them on the ice? I mean, that to me, that's natural, but we haven't had enough exposure to the WNBA where all of a sudden we're calling it cattiness and pettiness when that stuff, I almost said a bad word, where that stuff goes on all the time in other sports with young stars who come in. But Mike, I agree with you. Now we're talking more about the game. I love the way Angel Reese, you're so right about the defensive side, the toughness, the ability, again, there's positioning X's and O's, but there's also the want to, her tenacity to want to get the ball. I love it. It's fantastic. And now, I mean, what could work out better now for the way it started, where we are now? Now, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are teammates on the All-Star team going against the Olympic team. I'm telling you right now, the NBA All-Star game last year, the ratings were down. They've been in sixes. It was a 4.6. I'm going to say it right now. The WNBA All-Star game is going to outrate the NBA All-Star game this year because Caitlin Clark, who so many people talk about getting snubbed, and I don't agree. If she wasn't one of the top 12, I'm the meritocracy. If you're not one of the top 12, then you shouldn't be on this team if you're going by position as well, because who you taking off this team. So she'll be on teams going forward. I'm cool with that. But for all those that felt she should have been on the team, now she's playing against those players where everybody thinks they should be. And Angel Reese is as well, and their teammates as well. So I'm saying right now that game, well, now there are a lot of people that are going to say, so what? The NBA All-Star game is awful, which it is. It's like the NFL Pro Bowl. But I think this WNBA is going to be the next step in what they do in this All-Star game and its ratings.
And it's a great reminder, too. The All-Star game is a platform to celebrate the game however you see fit. And first and foremost, it is the meritocracy. You didn't need to force this because, again, in an Olympic year, you were going to have this opportunity. And now, because of the way you structure the All-Star game, you do wind up with the most interesting and compelling matchup, which is the conversation around Caitlin Clark and the Olympic roster getting to play out on the court. You still get to watch a couple of these incredibly talented players that have earned their way onto the WNBA All-Star roster with the records they've set and the way that they're playing thus far into this, and it happens in a very entertaining way. Like, honestly, this is one of those things where I applaud the W for just the way they've structured this. I mean, hell, we're going to talk about at some point this week, the MLB All-Star weekend coming up, where I just saw the headline, they tweaked the home run derby again. And it's like, Christ, when is it enough? Every year I'm relearning new rules for the home run derby, when the actuality is, hey, you need enough quality names out there to go on and put out a fun show. We've seen it in the past. The Julio Rodriguez All-Star home run derby was awesome the other year. And now for the WNBA, they've got a natural setup that's going to create an incredibly compelling product.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun to watch. It'll be interesting to see the media coverage on it. And, the whole Olympic thing, again, I've been on maternity leave, so I'm just like looking at everything on my phone like, oh my God, a snub. And then, all the media coverage that came out afterwards. And I'm a huge fan of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. And I think watching them be teammates again is going to be sick. I mean, come on.
I think it's going to be
not again,
awesome.
rather, but just seeing them be together.
I think it's going to be awesome, and I think it'll be interesting because we have seen an All-Star team beat a national team before, and so I will see what the expectations are for this one, but a lot of people are going to watch it, no doubt.
Expectations through the roof because of some big-time performers. Coming up next, though, did they perform well enough to crack our extended all-weekend break edition team? Coming up next, you're on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Last week was, of course, the 4th of July. God bless America. So we had the week off. I was still on maternity leave, so I'd had a lot of weeks off. But it's time for our all-week off team. So we're opening it up to last week as well. So gonna get your teams. Guys, so much to choose from here. Truly a lot of stuff going down. Let's start here with our second team. Who we going with?
Yeah, this is going to be funny because I think based on what I'm seeing in the doc, we basically skewed from this past weekend. Although I think there's going to be one admission in here that celebrates that. But we mentioned we've had a lot of time off. There's a lot to celebrate here. But I got to go near and dear on this one. A friend, part of a pretty cool moment here. My second team all week off pick, Dad, goes to the Cubs. Marquee Sports, their local broadcast, had their first all-female broadcast of a Chicago Cubs game here that involved Beth Mowins, obviously very well-known play-by-play announcer, Elise Menaker, who's game analyst there, and then field reporter and one of my former teammates in college football at ESPN, Taylor McGregor, who's done an outstanding job as the field analyst for them a long time there. I saw T-Mac the other day talking about the importance of representation in the broadcast booth, how seeing female broadcasters coming up early in her career gave her the belief that she could go and make this a career for herself. One of the best teammates I've ever been around. Another thing where it's a bunch of deserving people in the booth that all happen to be women that can hopefully inspire another generation. And just knowing Taylor personally, I know, Dad, you probably know Beth Mowins a little better than I do, but knowing Taylor the way I do, there's not a better role model for young broadcasters, period, regardless of gender, race, or what have you, to look up to than Taylor McGregor and the rest of this booth. So hats off to them and Marquee. Very cool moment.
Well, listen, agreed. They're opening doors, right? And for other women to go through. You got to know, and I worked with Kate Scott, who has done about every major sport imaginable. We worked together doing college football. And you just mentioned, Beth Mowins has been doing play-by-play for a long time. I mean, Holly Rowe and what she's done on the sideline, always asking great questions and asking a question. They're not only getting into the spotlight now, but doing really good jobs to keep that door open for others. So that's a good one. I like that one. Mine is going to go to the UFC 303. I had Ariel Helwani on before that, and that was the one where Conor McGregor was supposed to come back after all this time off, and he broke his pinky toe. So basically, the co-main event for UFC 303 that was in Vegas, I think last Saturday ago, had 4 different changes on the co-main event. And so it ended up being Diego Lopes against Dan Ige. Now, Dan Ige was told or contacted 4 hours before a bout. Remember, this is MMA. 4 hours before you can go in and get the crap kicked out of you in an octagon. So not even, I'm sure he'd been training, obviously, but 4 hours before the event was called off the couch, Joe Flacco-like, to come in a more dangerous situation to go into the octagon. And now he lost, but it was a decision. It wasn't a knockout. So he went in there and represented himself very well. Could you imagine, Mike, being on the couch with football and being called and, hey, in 4 hours, hey, we want you to come and play in this game. You'd go try and do it, right? I mean, you'd say, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. But then it'd be like, okay, how good are you in doing this? And he did well enough to have it a decision, no knockout. So kudos to him.
Yeah, he was getting ready to order it on pay-per-view. He was getting ready to watch the fight at home like everybody else and got contacted and all of a sudden had to pull this off. It made me think of a couple of things, Dad, because we've seen things close to this in sports. The pandemic college football season, BYU and Coastal Carolina played a game on super short notice, but you still had days to prepare for that. It shined a light on how ridiculous some of the extended scheduling is for college football, but they still had time to prepare. Even the most drastic example of the NFL I can think of this. Remember Baker Mayfield from a couple of seasons ago, going to the Los Angeles Rams, getting there on Wednesday, and then ending up starting that game on the weekend where they go out and beat the Las Vegas Raiders. but he still had days to prepare for that. This guy had hours, no camp, no time to really scout and digest his opponent. It's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen, and invalidates pretty much anyone else's complaint in sports about prep time. You know who could never do this, by the way, and I know you warred against this man for years? Batman. That coward Batman and all that prep time nonsense that people talk about. Every time you bring up a fight with superheroes, Batman's got an answer for everything, but he needs months to prepare. He could never have done what Daniel Ige did.
Nope, not get called up in short notice. They'd have to look at his belt and say, what do I have? Am I prepared for this? And then probably get smoked on that thing. And as I said, he lost unanimous decision, but each round was 29-28, 29-28, 29-28. So while it was unanimous, it was somewhat close. So kudos to him just for getting off the couch 4 hours and going and getting in a bout like that.
4 hours to go. You get the phone call. What's the first thing you do?
Cry.
Throw up.
Okay.
Throw up so I don't throw up in the ring after I get kicked in the stomach.
I'm thinking like caffeine, as much caffeine as we can find.
You know what? Probably not a bad idea. As someone that got 3 hours of sleep last night on jet lag, I am in a similar boat. Speaking of tears and emotional moments in sports, though, let's get to the first team all weekend, Team Dad. 945 days. That is the amount of time in between wins in Formula One for Sir Lewis Hamilton, arguably the greatest driver in the history of the sport. Went out and on his home turf won the British Grand Prix this weekend. It was incredible for him. In all of his previous 103 Grand Prix victories, he had always been pretty composed. But, Dad, you saw a guy who's getting ready to make the move to Ferrari next year, ending his storied time and tenure with Mercedes, get really emotional about what this meant to him at this point in his career.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had sound. My fault. Thought there was actually
you were
sound.
waiting for the sound, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which really is something, because this guy was so many multiple years in a row the champion, like Max Verstappen is going on that run now, and him thinking he was never going to win again, and Lewis Hamilton changing teams after this year. So a good win for him, obviously, for F1. So I'm excited more for. I love the start of the next season when these guys are on new teams, especially for Lewis Hamilton. That's going to be wild. Him not driving for Mercedes. My number one is going to be the Major League Baseball All-Star roster. So this is amazing to me. There were 32 first-time All-Stars. 19 of the All-Stars are under 27 years old. The youngest in the National League is Jackson Merrill. He's 21. And for the Orioles in the American League, Gunnar Henderson is 22. They're the youngest in each league. There's not one player on either roster that has double-digit All-Star appearances. And let's give it up for Paul Skeens, the number one pick, a year ago in the draft, come in pitching lights out for Pittsburgh. He's on the All-Star team. He's the first player to make an All-Star squad a year after being the number one pick in the draft. Dude's gotten called up and has been absolute smoke, especially throwing 100-mile-an-hour plus pitches. So congrats to him and all the other young players, first-time players that have made the All-Star team. It has really kind of taken a turn to the young this time around.
The Paul Skeens experience has been remarkable to start things off. And I think going back to the College World Series last year, we all knew we were watching something special. And you heard analysts then saying he was a guy that had a chance to come in and probably contribute right away at the major league level. But to see it already warrant these kinds of accolades in a league where you mentioned the youth of this All-Star roster, seeing a player like Ellie De La Cruz from the Cincinnati Reds come in, one of the most exciting young base stealers in the sport, and one of the best athletes, I think, across any of the four majors in North America, to see those now and so many of the young faces, we talked about this over recent years, not only come in and have a place in baseball, be able to be themselves, but now starting to ascend the ranks in the sport and be recognized like this. It's really impressive stuff.
Phillies led the way with 7. The Dodgers had 6. Padres and Guardians had 5 each. Then the Royals had 4, all the way down to the Giants with 2. So again, congrats on Ellie De La Cruz. You're right, Mike. I'd love to see, when we talked about crossover athletes in other sports, how he would excel in other sports. He is so much fun to watch.
Yeah, Ellie would excel in whatever the hell he chose to do. He's that kind of athlete. That is our all-week off team. Coming up next, a bold proclamation by one of the NBA's greatest players about the future of the league and dynasties. Next here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. This league, fellas, in the first 6-team trade in NBA history, Dallas, Golden State, Charlotte, Minnesota, Philadelphia, and Denver all participated in this extravaganza headlined by Klay Thompson. Of course, he's leaving Golden State. He is becoming a Dallas Maverick. Guys, this is crazy just when you look at all the pieces that had to move around for this to happen. And obviously, everyone's saying, here we go, end of sort of like a dynasty here in Golden State. How do we feel about this huge move in the future that's going on? We heard some stuff from Steve Kerr. He's saying, like, you know, it's the end of an era, but we understand why Klay wanted to make this move. Now that we've digested this, how do we feel about it?
Dad, I think this was inevitable based on what we saw over the last couple of seasons, based on the inability of Klay Thompson to ever fully bounce back from an understandable gauntlet of injuries that had him miss almost 2 years worth of basketball. And so given Golden State and what they had done financially, pushing the pedal to the floor, given a bunch of the young players that they had tried and infuse on that roster, and their decision to keep Draymond Green going back to last season, this felt inevitable to me, Dad. I think he represents something interesting for the Dallas Mavericks in trying to stack more shooting around that core there with Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. But what did you think about this?
Well, I mean, I knew he was going to be gone. We had talked about this before the end of the season. We thought the three-person dynasty there in Golden State and the way they were winning, that's what you have to give them. between him and Draymond and Steph. You don't see that a lot. These guys were together, 10, 11, 12 years all together, at least in that area there. I mean, you just don't see that anymore with the way guys can make money in other places. And, I know we had the apron now, but we had, you were paying the luxury tax, and Golden State was paying it. They were paying, but they were winning. So when you pay that luxury tax and you win, it makes it all worthwhile, right? Right? I mean, supposedly, certainly to the fan. Now the owner was paying it. Maybe we'll see about what they're paying, but they were paying it and they were winning. But then you have to get to the point of, do you continue to do that as you try now to rebuild, try and reload again with Draymond and Steph, or do you back off a little bit now?
Well, and the second apron under the new CBA has become more punitive now. So it's not like it was before. It's even more so costly for these teams. And we've seen a number of teams this offseason cite that second apron in the terms of why they've made certain moves or haven't made certain moves in retaining a lot of their players. So I think with Golden State, Dad, it's more about where they were in their team life cycle and what Klay's role was in that. We had seen him relegated to the bench at certain points briefly last season. They had for a long time one of the best shooting, if not the best shooting. They had the best shooting backcourt in the history of the NBA with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson at the height of their powers. And that was the core that allowed them to build around it. They can no longer do that. Steph Curry is a lot closer to his best basketball than any of the core of those three. And so they've got to do what it takes to build around him. But, and I saw this note from my buddy Kyle Sopp over at Pro Football Network. He said teams last year won 80% of the time this postseason, making more threes than their opponents. Klay Thompson had really 2 bad weeks in February where he shot about 24.5% from three. After that, for the remainder of the season, he shot 41.4% from three, including 37% when tightly guarded. So he's still a guy that is capable, albeit less frequently, to do this. And so if now you're going and changing the context in a place like Dallas, where we saw late in the postseason, especially, you've got to have safety valves that that Luka Doncic feels comfortable enough dishing the ball off to. Klay Thompson's a future Hall of Famer that I feel like can garner that kind of respect.
I agree, and we're going to get into where I think Klay fits in to Dallas. But as far as what Golden State does or what the dynasty is anymore, I mean, you do have teams that are paying though, right? You look at Philadelphia. They got 3 max deals out there after signing Paul George. You look at Boston, they're re-signing everybody, right? Everybody's making money. So you wonder, can you do it today with that second apron? Can you do it even though it's more punitive? Can you still keep a team together? I don't know if we'll ever see this where you have 3 teammates together for basically 11 or 12 years. I don't know if you're going to see that anymore. But to sit there and have the thought that we have no more dynasties, I don't know if that's going to be true either.
Well, and Steph Curry was the one in an interview that he did while at Team USA's basketball camp mentioned that right now it's probably going to be difficult for another NBA team to pull that off in the current standing in the league. I don't know if he's all that wrong in that, Dad, and I think that's something the NBA and the way that they've structured this wants. They've wanted the parity that they've seen more common in their NFL counterpart, and so trying to create essentially what's going to operate like a hard salary cap or closer to it than this league's ever had has so far kind of netted them that result, or at least that's, I think, their hope.
Let's take Philly out of it because Embiid's over 30. Paul George's going to be 35. Tyrese Maxey has a long way to go. But why can't Boston be that team? They've paid guys. They have the guys under contract. Now it's going to be filling in around, right? The other pieces on the chess table that you're going to put in, but they're a team. But you look at some of the other teams, how they're building. SGA and Chet Holmgren, and they bring Hartenstein. They bring him in from the Knicks and other teams that we are talking about now building up from youth. And we'll be able to keep these guys on their team for a while. I don't know. I guess whatever you just made the argument there though is there's a lot of teams with quality cores right now, none of which seem heads and tails better than the rest. Boston's coming off what was universally looked at as one of the easiest postseason runs in recent NBA history. You've got a Denver Nuggets team coming back next year with a core that won a title a year ago. You mentioned the Luka Doncic-led Mavs, the SGA-led Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference. You've got the Knicks that
were contenders last year, the Cavs that were froggy, the Bucks and Sixers that are going to be better. Overall, there are a lot of teams, and there's not one team, albeit Boston performed like it in the postseason. But again, relative to that competition, they would be the one. You're right that you could put, and the odds reflect that right now. But I guess the point from Steph is between the apron and the amount of young quality talent in a bunch of different spots around the league, it is tougher.
Let's also wait a little bit on Oklahoma City, right? I mean, these guys are young players. Tatum and Brown finally won it at 27 years old or whatever they are. So let's give some of these young teams a chance for the young players to grow a little bit into the league to see what they can build into. So I'm not throwing it off the table. Do I think it's hard to do? Do I think the league made it harder to do? Yes, without question, they made it harder to do. And there is no question that Boston is right now in the best position to do it.
Jessie, one of the other interesting moves that popped up over the last couple of weeks involved Demar DeRozan, and I want to get into the specifics of that here quickly, and I think the team that impacts it the most, but give us what we've got on that deal.
Yeah, so he heads to Sacramento in a sign and trade. So he gets 3 years, $74 million from the Kings. Harrison Barnes heading to San Antonio. Bulls end up with Chris Duarte, and Chicago fans looking forward to the lottery there. Hopefully Cooper Flagg. But guys, this is obviously great for the Kings, right? Because they're adding one of the most decorated scorers in the league. However, when you look at it, they're also not addressing any of their established weaknesses here. So obviously, if you can get DeMar DeRozan there, $74 million, 3 years, you do it, right? If you can get more wins during the regular season like the Kings need to sort of inch closer to the playoffs there, you do it. But again, how do we feel about this considering defense was a glaring issue for them?
I mean, I listen, you have to make moves. I get it. Sacramento was 9 last year? They were in the play-in. And does this get them out of the play? And they were, now listen, in the Western Conference, you had every team sitting there with a winning record, all the way to number 10, 7 through 10, the play-ins all had winning records. Sacramento and the Warriors were 46 and 36, 10 games over 500. So they had winning records, unlike the Eastern Conference, where the bottom two, the Bulls and the Hawks, had losing records. So, yeah, does it help them? It absolutely does. But, Mike, we keep talking about a stacked Western Conference, so I don't know how much they actually move up the ladder. But you can't stand still. You got to try and improve, and they've definitely improved with DeRozan, no doubt about it. But I don't know how much they, as I just said, jump up the ladder in the West. Yeah,
GoJo, so they almost made the playoffs, right? One more win in the play-in tournament would have done it. One more win in the regular season would have been an easier path, obviously. 4 more wins would have locked up a first-round spot outright there. So
to me, this is less about the Kings, though, because like you said, I just don't think at this point DeMar DeRozan is that kind of needle mover. And more to me, as we'll get to our NBA tiers, looking at who should be excited, happy, sad, nervous, what have you, this is a lot more reflection about the Los Angeles Lakers in the offseason that they haven't had so far. So why don't we get into this, guys? We've had so much NBA news that we talked about happening here. Free agency's been popping off. We've talked about all the salaries getting dumped off here. So let's do tiers, TEARS. And start off with this, Dad. Tears of joy. Looking at this NBA offseason right now through free agency, which team or fan base should be crying tears of joy at the leaps that they've made this offseason?
I go with Philly and Paul George. I mean, again, you've got the guy handling the ball in Maxey, the guy inside Embiid, and the wing guy in Paul George, who can obviously take it at hoop. And as we talked earlier, a wing defender as well, which is what you need against Boston, who does such a nice job of ball movement and getting those shots outside. So to me, this was a no-brainer that it was Paul George in the Philadelphia 76ers quest to fulfill getting Joel Embiid and fulfill that championship. I think they're right there. I think this would be a great chance for them to do it. So I go Paul George.
That's certainly a big-time move, and the biggest name of it, and I understand the name I'm about to say does not register in the same way on the Richter scale, but Oklahoma City Thunder, getting Isaiah Hartenstein from the New York Knicks, to Jesse's point about addressing a specific need, we saw when they faced off against Dallas in the postseason, Chet Holmgren and company got beat up on the inside. Chet's a great player, especially extending the floor, but he is not beefed up enough to deal with the kind of guys that they've got all throughout the Western Conference. And Isaiah Hartenstein brought that toughness, especially when you had the injuries to Mitchell in New York during a lot of that season run. He gave them that toughness. I think a lot like you saw in Minnesota, where Karl Anthony Towns for years wanted to sit parked behind the three-point line. So what did they do? They brought in Rudy Gobert to be more of that traditional big man. Hartenstein throughout his NBA journey has been used to getting in where he fits in, and I think he fits a perfect need for an Oklahoma City team that right now sit with the third best odds to win the title, Dad. They'd be a team I would be comfortable picking at plus 850 to win the title next year. I think the experience they got from this last postseason that we heard a lot about from a lot of different young teams about how necessary that is. That same aforementioned Minnesota Timberwolves team got chirped a lot about it. I think Oklahoma City's got a bona fide superstar in SGA, and I think the rest of that roster now with this addition, combine that with what they've already done trading Josh Giddey this offseason, makes them absolutely a team in the driver's seat in the Western Conference for the title this year.
And I love watching them. I mean, they're a fun team to watch too, right? I mean, that's the other thing. They're entertaining. You like to see championship basketball and good basketball. You like to see entertaining basketball. The way Anthony Edwards was finishing up the season and Brunson in New York. You like to see the excitement, and I think that's exactly what Oklahoma City can bring as well.
All right, let's go the second tier down. Joyful Sniffles. A solid addition is going to help the team in the future, but doesn't put them over the hump quite yet. Dad, I look squarely at the San Antonio Spurs. They bring Chris Paul over as a veteran presence on an incredibly young roster who is going to throw ignorant lobs to one of the best young basketball players on the planet in Victor Wembanyama. I think between the veteran presence and the way the styles match up here, I understand Chris Paul's not who he used to be. I understand you're always worried about injury now. But man, having him in that locker room, Victor Wembanyama, I think we're going to have serious MVP chatter about next year. I think we saw flashes of it during this rookie season. And I think now with this particular addition, you're going to have him in prime position to go out there and be a legitimate MVP candidate this season.
Well, I think you're going to need to see that out of them each year is positive moves to build something around Victor and what the capabilities and potentials that we see. So hopefully a more exciting team even to watch other than just Wembanyama and the rest of the team as well.
I would say this right now, Dad. Victor Wembanyama plus 2,800. He's behind Jason Tatum, Jalen Brunson, and a number of other guys for MVP right now. I'd be much more comfortable betting on him for MVP than I would Jason Tatum ever.
I agree. Plus make a few bucks as well, which never hurts. My joyful sniffles is going to be Klay Thompson going to Dallas. You look last year, and it was obviously Luka, everything averaging about 9 threes. I think Kyrie was about 9, and then P.J. Washington was averaging about 6 threes. And P.J., get him at the trade deadline. It didn't do a whole lot in the playoffs. Klay is so well seasoned. Klay averaged 9 threes this year, 10 last year. So maybe it will be able to put him over top. I'm not sure it will, but it's going to give them something that they need, another guy to really count on that 3-point line for a team that was in the Western Conference, finals, was right there. I do kind of like, I kind of like this move for him. We heard about LeBron, was talking about taking less money for maybe to get a guy like Klay, a shooter. So I like where he's gone as another option to drop that 3-pointer for Dallas.
Certainly a big option there. We'll see if it's able to pay off in that way. Let's go down to the third tier, shedding a single tier. Basically status quo here. You either brought someone in, re-signed someone that doesn't really move the needle either way. Dad, Los Angeles Clippers, James Harden coming back. Now, it's not an incredibly cost-prohibitive deal. 2 years, $70 million with the player option for the 34-year-old. But at this point now with Kawhi Leonard, who thankfully is healthy enough to enjoy his time with USA Basketball right now, but unfortunately can't seem to be healthy enough when it matters most for this Clippers team. James Harden, we've seen, is not going to carry any team anywhere by himself, especially not at this point in his career. So losing Paul George when they're getting ready to open up their own arena and all that stuff, I just don't know what this does for anybody really, for a Clippers team that's sort of just out in the abyss.
Right. And quickly before I get to mine, I said Dallas, the Western Conference Finals. Of course, they were in the finals against Boston that they made. And we'll see again if Klay can help them over the top there. My not really going to move the needle is going to be Buddy Hield going to Golden State. I mean, Buddy Hield takes the spot for Klay Thompson, right? And Klay Thompson, even with the knee and the Achilles, was a better defender than Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield can shoot. I mean, we saw him come of age in college, the way he was dropping the threes. So I just think that's what they had about the same percentage in stats of threes as well. So I don't see that moving the needle a lot. I don't see Golden State being any more than a play-in team.
All right, let's get to sobbing. The final tier on this one, Dad. The Los Angeles Lakers fans got to be a little bit confused, right? We mentioned with DeMar DeRozan, between James Harden, DeMar DeRozan, Paul George, a number of players that LeBron James said he would take a pay cut or inferred he would take a pay cut in order to bring over there. None of them have materialized for this Lakers team that so far has had the biggest headline of their offseason been the fact that you now have two guys with the last name James on the roster.
Yeah, it is. I'm with you. For LeBron taking less money to try and get other people there, it certainly has not worked out that way, to where the most we're talking about the Lakers now is Bronny playing in the summer league. So yeah, that hasn't gone over very well. So I would agree there. Mine is going to be Tobias Harris. I'm really not sure. He signs the 2-year, $52 million deal with Detroit. He's 31 years old. I'm not really sure of the fit there. This needs to be a young, unless he's an incredible locker room guy that we don't know about, that will help develop players. I'm not sure of this move. Now, $26 million a year in this day and age in the NBA may not seem like a lot. I think it's a hell of a lot, but I don't know why that move for a team that needs to build from youth, and the way we're seeing NBA teams now do it. And that's what Detroit, I think, is going to have to do, sprinkle in a vet every now and then. But I wasn't sure about this vet of sprinkling in this guy for 52.
I'm so proud of Tobias Harris. He is, at the end of this contract, going to go over $300 million in career earnings. That man is a hero at the bank. What he affords that team, I have no idea. We saw that contract age like milk in Philadelphia. But really, from that perspective, all I can do is look up and say, hey, man, people are going to keep giving out this money, and Tobias Harris apparently is, like you said, a good enough dude and just good enough of a basketball player to keep on pulling it in.
I mean, his career earnings over $300 million. Jason Tatum got that in one deal. That's where basketball is right now. That's where basketball is, which is kudos to them.
That makes sense. The fact that Tobias Harris can go over and call half the NFL broke when we've seen right now that in critical moments he can't all of a sudden be counted on here. I think I saw in his 2-year deal, he has got as much or more guaranteed money as Devontae Smith got from the Eagles for balling out after being a first-round pick for that team and helping them set records 2 years ago. It's been incredible to watch this NBA offseason. Coming up next, though, you mentioned the name in Summer League, Bronny James. We've got interesting questions about his future and his acquisition for this team next on GoJo and Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We've talked a lot over the last couple of weeks, or everyone has, I should say. I was off air, so I didn't really talk much about it. But Bronny James now joining the Los Angeles Lakers as a second-round draft pick for this team. In the midst of Summer League right now, I know he's held out in the most recent game with some knee soreness, but saw him out on the court already. And already we've seen the exact swirling amount of coverage we expected for the player with this name coming into the league in the manner in which he did. And I saw our friends over at Ramona, Kayla, and Will at 104.5 The Zone in Nashville asking questions about between Bronny and Caitlin Clark, who's getting worse media coverage right now as they become incredibly polarizing names. I know you've probably gotten a chance to talk about this maybe more than I did just before the time in Tokyo. But LeBron James's son, Bronny, now stepping into this role where nepotism is going to be the primary conversation about this player. What does he need to keep in mind in handling this, Dad?
Well, I mean, listen, there has been a lot of father-son things that have gone on in the world of sports, the world of broadcasting. You know, you're living that as well. Of just how you handle everything. And I always love the way you handle everything. You kind of disarm people when they bring it up, because the bottom line is you just like in Bronny's case, in your case, you had to prove yourself, and you did, to continue a career, even when I left ESPN, to stay at ESPN. And then, you had a choice, and you chose to be where you are now. So at some point, no matter and the people, man, talking about Bronny and this, man, I swear I heard somebody say, now I'm drawing a blank, that the first thing that LeBron should have told the Lakers is don't draft Bronny. That's one of the most ridiculous things I ever heard in my life. I mean, what an incredible thing this is. I mean, you don't get this, right? You had Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. You had Gordie Howe played with his two kids. And really, that's it. I mean, this is just such a cool thing. And at the end of the day, the talent will have to take over. You're going to have to prove that you belong there. Bronny was always thought to be when he declared for the draft, it was a second-round pick. And that's exactly where he went. Number 55, close to the end of the draft. That's where he went. And you see guys in the second round play in the G League or maybe play up some. And that's probably what we're going to see here. So I get because it's LeBron and we see his son, that they get that kind of talk. It really just bums me out. Bronny's going to have to prove himself, and he knows that. He's going to have to live on his own 2 feet and with the basketball and prove that he belongs in the NBA. I love, there's the part about LeBron saying, Bronny doesn't hear the criticism and all that. I don't believe any of that. I believe every player does. It's how you choose to deal with it, okay? Everybody hears the criticism. But the one thing LeBron said about Bronny, I agree. So let me read this. He said, this is LeBron. Just imagine if you were a kid, you were born into a situation where your dad was super famous, super wealthy, and you, the kid, still had the drive to want to be able to accomplish things for yourself. I personally don't know if I would have been able to do that if the roles were reversed. When I was coming up, I had no choice. I had to make it out for me, my mom, my family, my hometown, my city. If Bronny wants to stop right now and never play basketball or just wanted to be a gamer or anything he wanted to be other than basketball, he could have done that. People don't understand how hard that is, and the commitment for him to be coming out of heart surgery less than a year ago to be able to be in the NBA. The kid, he's special. And I agree with that. I mean, the kid busted his ass. I mean, to lesser degrees of following fathers, you and Jake, you guys busted your asses to get where you wanted to get as high as you could go. You guys put the work in. Bronny, it put the work in to get there and get the chance. And now it's going to have to live on what he does. So I think he went right where he was supposed to go, but because it's his dad, everybody's gonna sound off on the nepotism thing. Just let Bronny his work to get to this part. As I said, he was projected a second rounder. It's exactly where he went. Now let's see what he can do on the court.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty funny from afar, just seeing it, because it's really this story and the reaction to Bronny is just however you feel about LeBron and however you feel about nepotism, because no one really knows much of anything personally about Bronny. We didn't get to see a lot of him last year at USC, and I thought Nick Wright made some of the most coherent points about this, and you touched on it briefly there, but we just sort of gloss over the heart condition part that sort of derailed the trajectory that this player had been on in high school. I mean, remember even going into college, going into the McDonald's All-American game, the trajectory that he had been on, the improvement that he had made, all that stuff. Like, listen, all the hard work and stuff for children of nepotism and people that come up in second generation, I don't expect anyone to really care all that much about it, because we also had advantages that most people couldn't dream of in the midst of that process. And so I don't expect him or anyone else to get a pat on the back for all of that one. He got picked here by this team, and they cleared out the space for it because he is special and because he is related to the most important player on that team. And from here on out, I don't know, Dad, for his NBA career. I truly couldn't answer the question you if I think this is the best thing for his NBA career long-term or not. To be here coming up under him in this way with this kind of spotlight and scrutiny on him for a player that was picked where he was, because we don't talk about second-round picks this much or this often, and this is going to be the norm for him and has been all the time. So for the rest of it, I would say I looked at this as, again, given where he was picked, largely fine. I admit my biases going in as a child and nepotism myself, but as far as, Jesse, what this actually does for him long-term and the questions about that basketball-wise, I truly don't know the answer, especially if him and Rich Paul and them adhere to this idea that they put out pre-draft that he wouldn't play in the G League, that's not part of the plan that they had for Bronny in a way that would deviate from what players normally in that position probably would do.
Totally agree. Only time is going to tell if this was the right move for him in terms of like looking at a career from a meta level, like what goes on right now. Obviously, it's going to be great for him. And he is also just going to make a lot of money in endorsements and doing Daddy and Me commercials with LeBron. But what I wanted to point out was, Senior, one thing that you said in that statement, that the statement LeBron made, that I just had to laugh at, was that he was like, and if he just decided he wanted to be a gamer, he didn't want to do this anymore. And I was like, that is so not true. Do you really think if he was like, Dad, I don't want to do this, LeBron would be like, the hell you are. Get your ass out there. Get your ass out there, because we're playing together because I said we are. There is no way LeBron would let Bronny walk away until they step foot on that court together. And I stand by that no matter what LeBron says.
Wow. Even if he said he didn't want to play at all. Huh?
He would be like, no.
Dad, this is the other backdrop of all this, though, is that LeBron had stated this as a goal for a long time. Now, it's insane in a lot of levels that it's actually coming to fruition. And I do think we haven't spent enough time marveling at that. I mean, I saw the sound yesterday from Steve Kerr at USA basketball camp saying, as LeBron James getting ready for year 22 in the NBA, I think this is the first time he's played in the Olympics in over a decade. And Steve Kerr's like, I can't believe how hard this guy practices. And he asked Spo and Ty Lue, who had both coached LeBron in the NBA, and they said, it's like this all the time. This is the way this guy's approached it forever. And the fact that going into year 22, we're still talking about him being able to do this. Like, think about this. LeBron James, in year 22 of being a professional basketball player, is not the part of this father-son equation we have any questions about. And that probably deserves a lot more of us stopping and marveling at than it's getting as we're discussing this headline.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing I do think, though, he'll be playing in the G League. I do think, listen, how are you going to get better? You got to get reps. Is he going to sit on in all honesty, the best thing for his career is to go play some in the G League, because what is he getting sitting on the end of the bench, maybe only playing garbage time? Remember,
I agree,
their G League is in the same facility. Their G League is in the same facility as the Lakers, so he could be there practicing with them, but to get actual game reps, he needs to play in the G League.
That's why, is this what's best for his career, or is this what's best for what LeBron wants? We'll see.
I don't know, but did Thanasis make people this mad? Am I forgetting that? I don't know. It just seems like we kind of jumped up a level in this all because, again, it's tied to Embrace Debate, LeBron James, Michael Jordan coming up next on First Take. Coming up next here, though, we had a lot of else going on, including a full-blown meltdown at Wimbledon and interesting discourse around one of our nation's most important holiday celebrations. Next here on GoJo Golic. All right, guys, we had the 4th of July go over another abrupt music breaks today. Good Lord. Nikki Sudo and the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest are what we're going to talk about here now. So the annual 4th of July treat extravaganza took place this year without the foremost name in hot doggery. That would be one Joseph Chestnut, who, because of an issue with sponsorships, was not eligible to compete in the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest this year. We know he's got the upcoming Netflix showdown with former competitive eater Kobayashi, who was his longtime nemesis. But Dad, Jessie, I wanted to ask you guys, because I was over in Tokyo. I didn't get to watch this live, of what it was like. You ultimately had Patrick Bertoletti on the men's side win, eating 58 hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes. You had Miki Sudo, who has basically been Joey Chestnut's counterpart in terms of dominant on the female side, win with 51 hot dogs and buns, which would have been third in the men's contest this year. What was the atmosphere like around the event this season without having Joey Chestnut there?
Well, by crowd, it was still packed. I mean, it was as popular as ever there. I don't know what the ratings were. Jeremy Schaap was in your role, Mike, and he did a great job. I know you did it for a couple of years, you and Jason Fitz. And again, one of my biggest regrets while at ESPN is not doing that. But Jeremy Schaap showed the great enthusiasm that you would show. He did a good job. George Shea, still to me, is the greatest introduction man of all time in any sport. Doesn't matter. I would hire him to introduce players anywhere. The dude is just fantastic on the introductions. It's almost as good as the competition itself. And man, I felt bad. Bertoletti, you know, everybody just crushing him on media. You didn't really win. You're in second, blah, blah, blah. He did win. He went up against competitors he had to go up against, and he beat them. Bottom line, does he know that Joey Chestnut wasn't there? Yes, he understands that, but he still won. To me, the story was Sudo. I mean, Miki Sudo, what she did, she would have been third in the men's division. She would have been third. Eating 51 hot dogs. It's her 10th mustard belt. So that to me was the amazing part about this. So congrats to Bertoletti on that, on the win. I know Joey Chestnut was eating against four veterans, and he had 57 in 5 minutes, which I'm not going to lie, I kind of question, whether he got that many in 5 minutes.
I mean, he did it on a live stream, so we can go back and look and watch it.
Check
like, it's
the
not
tape.
like he did it under cover of darkness. He was at Fort Bliss, and he was at Fort Bliss in El Paso. He raised, in that time, since 106 hot dogs were eaten, they were doing $1,000 for every hot dog. So $106,000 donated to military families there. But Dad, having that headline, which I'm sure is exactly what Joey Chestnut want, of, hey, you had the winner of the contest eat 58 in 10 minutes, and Joey eats 57 in 5 on the same day. I don't know, because I doubt hardly any people watched that live stream of that one. To your point, I'm sure the Nathan's contest was still very well watched. I do wonder if this is ultimately a situation kind of like Live Golf, where it didn't seem like anyone had hard feelings towards Joey from the competitive eating side, but I wonder if everyone kind of loses in this situation because the two needed each other so much.
They mentioned Joey Chestnut during the broadcast a couple times. Yeah. They called him they were like, he's great, blah, blah, blah. But Joey Chestnut holds 55 records in Major League Eating. Like, you got to get him back.
There's no doubt that he would have dominated again. So it's like, it's a situation. Do you want to see something competitive? Of which this was somewhat competitive. What did Bertoletti eat? He ate 57, and second place Esper, I think, was 53 or 54, right in that area there. So it was more competitive anyway. Or do you want to see the dominance? It's like when Tiger Woods is dominating, do you want to keep seeing him dominate, or do you want to see some competition? You want Joey Chestnut in there? Joe, whether he ate 57 or whatever it was in 5 minutes or not, the bottom line is if he was in the contest, he would have destroyed everybody like he always does. So, but you like to see that because it's such a eye-popping thing to watch him do it. So it's just a matter of, there were probably some people that said, well, good, now we'll actually see a competition amongst eaters coming down to the wire instead of just seeing if Joey Chestnut's going to break his own record. So I'd imagine you have people on both sides of this thing.
Doesn't it feel like there's an asterisk, though? That's how I feel, personally.
I hate the asterisk thing. I really do.
But
it's not Pat's fault. He went up against. It's like, if you play in the Super Bowl against Kansas City and all of a sudden Mahomes gets hurt and he's not there and the other team wins, do I care less about my Super Bowl ring? You want to put an asterisk against my Super Bowl ring? Go ahead. I'll just wave my Super Bowl ring in front of your face, even though I didn't beat Pat Mahomes to do it. Don't give a damn. I got the ring. Pat's got the belt.
I get it. It would have felt different to me if it was just the sands of time. Like, oh, Joey Chestnut finally had to retire and someone else finally had to win. But the situation surrounding this makes it really interesting. I do wonder what the Netflix draw is going to be for that special. That was, to me, the competition and the fire between those two drove this whole enterprise to such new heights. Joey then became this mainstay of the American holiday where it didn't feel like the 4th of July until you watched Joey Chestnut mouth harass a bunch of hot dogs into oblivion and set some new record for the American people. So I felt like it was kind of a net loss for everybody involved. I'm glad to see it still went well in the broadcast. I heard Jeremy did a phenomenal job, I'm not surprised at all. And so him, Tiffany Green, Rich Shea in the booth, all them. It's a phenomenal broadcast. It's a ton of fun. And I'm glad it went very well for them. Speaking of Americans doing well over the 4th of July and over this holiday week, Jessie, Wimbledon, Team USA going hard in the paint right now.
Yeah, we have like a really American event, and then we have a really not American event, Wimbledon, over in England. So been a good tournament for the American players, like you said. First time in 20 years that 7 Americans have made the 4th round of Wimbledon. Woo! But that didn't last very long, actually, guys. Coco Gauff falling to fellow American Emma Navarro. That was in addition, to Iga Swiatek falling. So the top 2 seeds on the women's side are out, which really opens things up over here. And guys, that name right there, Iga Swiatek, she's Polish. Fun fact, there is no W sound in the Polish language. So that's why the W makes a V sound. So now
I'm glad you knew that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought.
Dad, you watched this entire match with Coco Gauff that she ended up losing here and included a bit of a meltdown. You saw the constant pleading between her and her coaching box here. What did you make of her performance?
First, I got to give it up for Emma Navarro. Let's talk about the winner. 22 years old, one of the moving herself up in the top golf who played in college. She played at Virginia, won actually an NCAA title a couple of years ago at Virginia. Mike, she is about as calm and cool and collected as I've seen for a young player. And now young, we've seen teenagers when she's 22, so I don't know how young that's considered. It's damn well young to me. I mean, she was just unflappable in this. And Coco Gauff, I was really surprised. She got absolutely thrown off for her game. And Emma even said it in the interview after. She said, I could see her getting frustrated. I just tried to concentrate on the things that were frustrating her to keep doing them, to keep frustrating her. And I mean, almost after every point or every other point, Coco was looking up at her coach, just palms up like, what the hell do I do? Or what's going on? And you could see the coach trying to do like things to say to do. And she'd still be like, I'm trying. You could see her mouth and I'm trying that. She was so out of her game, so frustrated in this one. And me and your mother were sitting here watching, going, even the interview after, this young lady, Emma Navarro, was just, I mean, no giddiness, no, oh my God, I can't believe. I mean, she did give reverence to playing on center court to all the greats that have played, but though she handled herself so incredibly well, I'll be real interested to see how far she goes.
I will say Coco after also was pretty, I thought, astute in her assessment, basically saying like, yeah, it's ultimately on my shoulders at the end of the day. I'm the player. I'm capable enough to make these adjustments. Wimbledon's kind of been the hang up for her. I think it's the only major where she hasn't had a quarterfinal appearance, or the only Grand Slam event, I should say, where she hasn't had a quarterfinal appearance, and she put that on her shoulders. It's a good reminder. I'm glad. It's kind of like watching golfers get destroyed by really difficult like US Open courses, where it reminds you how difficult of a mental game tennis is, where once the wheels come off and it is just you out there in an individual sport, how difficult it is to try and put the wheels back on and continue to go, even when you're one of the best young players in the entire planet. The way you mentioned the 22-year-old player there in Emma Navarro, the 20-year-old Coco Gauff going out here and accomplishing what she's done this entire career. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day and send me, hopefully, to find some sleep for the love of God. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And if you miss any of us there, you can catch the best of GoJo and Golic noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio, or, of course, wherever you get your podcasts, and right here on our YouTube channel after we get done with the show. And, guys, let's get started off with this. Mike Golic Sr. is 61 years old, going on 62 right now. That's not news because Dad's birthday is coming up in December. The Clarion Ledger apparently also suffers from this same inability to read the room and understand relevance of birthdays and the way they frame their headlines. Because last week on July 2nd, the Clarion Ledger ran with this headline on Twitter. Archie Manning, Ole Miss football legend, dad of Eli Peyton, grandfather of Arch, is 75. Everyone, through every word before that final is 75, held their breath, thinking this man was dead. I mean, Dad, what the hell's wrong with these people? It wasn't the week of his actual birthday. There was almost no reason to run this aside from scaring the ever-loving you-know-what out of people.
And that's why they did. His birthday is what, in May? His birthday is May 19th. They did that to scare the hell and make sure everybody read the headline. Right? That's what they did it for. They didn't say anything wrong, right? He is 75 and he's the dad and granddad of said people. But I'm with you. The way he said it, you see his picture and you see the headline and you see the beginning of it, you're like, oh my God, no, say this isn't true. And of course, it's not true. So yes, they did it for the effect, without question.
3.7 million views. That's why they did it.
Yes, exactly right.
That's psychotic clickbait.
Yeah.
I understand that we live in a society that we're always going to headline skim and that coming up with the best possible lead to draw people in. But going to the known death format is a level that I think should be even beneath us of the internet. As I am a child of the internet and the hellscape I will never leave, this is a bridge too far for all of us, or should be. At some point, we've got to stand for something and not just wantonly risk looking like we're killing off the stars of old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you because I saw that and I said, no. And of course, as we said, it was no. So I don't know what isn't for clickbait, Mike. I mean, this is your guys, you 34-year-olds out there. You know, this is and even younger than you 34-year-olds.
Whoa.
Just
Catching strays. I'm not 34 yet.
I was going to say, I don't know why you're doing that and painting Jessie in this brush either. Good Lord, bringing up her age on air, you monster.
God, I just came back from having a baby. Now you're telling me I'm older than I am? Yeah, I'm 33, okay?
I was just going to say, I mean, I didn't think I was too far out of school there.
My Botox says, my Botox is giving 27, but, okay.
Giving those vibes, right? Yeah, but listen, as we said, it's for clicks. So they got their clicks. They probably feel good about getting their clicks, and there'll be no repercussions for it.
I mean, there's such easier ways to do this now, man. Just drum up controversy about Arch at Texas or something. Get ready for the video game next week where you can play with him anyway and go on and acquire this like a normal person, not fake killing people. Jesse, let's get to that and get to some actual good, wholesome news out of the NHL.
Something that is not clickbait, fellas. Okay, the Kraken have hired the first NHL female assistant coach, Jessica Campbell. She's going to be behind the bench next season. Guys, this is akin to when we were talking about like the Cubs broadcast. This is just a person who deserves this, who happens to be a woman. And obviously it's cool, it's historic, and it's going to open doors for women in the NHL for coaching at all levels. But Jessica Campbell, she deserves this, period.
Yeah, listen, she played Canadian Women's Hockey League. She played at Cornell. She was an assistant for the Kraken's minor league team, and now she's an assistant for the Kraken. So she has come up the ranks as a player as well through the coaching. And so congrats to her. I mean, we love seeing the women breaking through these ceilings in the men's league because they're capable of doing that. And they're respected by the men. And they're respected by the people that they're coaching. But the one thing about Mike, I'd say about her personal life, I think people don't know. How about this? She participated in the 6th season of Battle of the Blades, a Canadian reality show in which hockey players are teamed up with figure skaters and perform pairs routines in front of a panel of judges to earn money for charities. So hockey players with figure skaters do a pairs routine and get judged on it to see. It's kind of Dancing with the Stars on Ice.
Was it
sponsored
by Tim Hortons? That's so Canadian.
I was going to say Labatt Blue Lights and Tim Hortons sponsoring what sounds like the most Canadian reality show you could possibly come up with here. You know me. I'm a reality show trash panda. This is something that's right up my alley here. Actual retail price sold. I'm in on that one. Congratulations to Jessica Campbell for going out and putting herself out there on Canadian reality television, which is no small feat, but also just grinding it through. And I think that's the best part. One of the parts that people appreciate most about hockey is the entire system is set up to basically only reward you if you grind through it here. It's an arduous road up as a player and certainly through as a coach. And Jessica Campbell in both of those arenas seems to have acquitted herself remarkably and now gets this great opportunity and gets to do it in an organization with arguably the best colors in all of the NHL. Yep. So we love that certainly too for her there. Jesse, let's get to the third here. Not a headline I anticipated reading over the course of time I was gone here. Sainthood back in the news in 2024.
We finally have a patron saint of the internet. I know everyone has been waiting for that one, obviously. So Carlo Acutis, who died in 2006 of leukemia, unfortunately, at the age of 15, was known as God's influencer. So a title that is not going to be bestowed upon you, GoJo. It's God's influencer here. So he used the internet to spread awareness of the Catholic faith. So he's going to become the church's first millennial saint. And guys, I did not know this. Apparently it's been years and years of this process of becoming a saint. It's a 3-step process. I don't know what the steps are.
It's 3-step, and it started in 2013, and I believe it just happened where the Pope announced the canonization of him. This one blew my mind. Not gonna lie. But hey, so be it. We have another saint.
I guess we don't perform miracles the way we used to. Now it's just internet miracles.
Well, I was just going to say, like, it's got to be pretty hard to do that now, but to find, and I'd have to imagine, in the Catholic Church, it's not the place that I would think of as the most technologically savvy place on earth. Generally tends to skew older. And so him coming in and being able to do anything on the computer at that point and then show that to the people at the church, that alone had to feel like a minor miracle. If he was able to coherently explain to a group of older adults how anything on the internet worked, as someone, and Jesse, you and I kind of have to do this on a daily basis with Dad, it does feel like a minor miracle is being pulled off each and every time.
I mean, I'm surprised they didn't just accuse him of witchcraft. So it's really nice that he was able to explain this, and now he's going to become a saint.
All right, this is how it went. Again, take it for how you want. Again, you said it's a 3-step process. First, the Pope must declare a deceased person venerable, a formal recognition that they lived a heroically virtuous life in order to be beatified, and recognized as blessed. They must be taken part in a miracle, which is usually one of healing. Canonization requires a second miracle after beatification.
Was the miracle explaining the internet?
Here's the miracle. At the Vatican officially recognized that he interceded from heaven. Remember, he died in 2006. He interceded from heaven in 2013 to save the life of a Brazilian child who was suffering from a rare condition. The Vatican said the 4-year-old prayed to him for coming into contact with one of his relics, a piece of clothing, prayed to him and was healed, and they're recognizing that as a miracle, and then leading to his canonization. I don't understand the whole thing, but there you go. That's it explained.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad you just read all of it then. So thank you for that. It's a miracle we all made it through this show after the week off that we all had here. If you appreciated that, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Thanks so much. I'm going to go get some sleep. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.